Alright, MA Marignon, turn 57. This is probably going to be a momentous one. We have a couple potential large battles. This is not a good sign. Not a start and a dire portent. So, okay, this at least is not too bad. Stellar focus, so whoever this is, I'm not actually sure offhand who this is. It is 5 astral pearls every turn, so not the end of the world, but we get magic phase attacked on top of Abyssea's fort. Nope. Not on, no, so this is just, what the heck? So the lizard shaman who has gone insane and is feeble-minded. So I don't know what this is. This might not be okay. You know, we have a site searcher here. I'm actually completely lost as to what's going on, because this looked like it was a magic phase attack, but it can't possibly be a magic phase attack because this guy doesn't, you know, he no longer has like any magic paths, so he can't have cast any spells. This is also like nowhere near the border. This was Abyssea, right? Did I get the flag wrong? No? Yeah, it's Abyssea. Yeah, I have no idea how this is even possible because this is like on the opposite side of our nation. So anyway, I don't really foresee this working out for this crazy lizard shaman who's feeble-minded, because yeah, I mean, this lady, she's not really set up to do a bunch of fighting, but she's a pretty powerful aircaster. So that's a weird one that I absolutely cannot explain, but you know, hey, it's not Dominions without a little bit of mystery. And hey, we find a magic site, Oracle's Lair. This is kind of useful. I think this gives us some of the graphs, so we'll definitely take a look at this. No gems from it though, I don't think, which is always a little sad, but still, graphs are nice, and here's some gems here. This definitely looks like a death gem. Lilium Veil maybe is one of those ones that spreads diseases, which would be a bit sad, especially since this might be on top of our fort. So I'll have to double check and make sure. I think this is where we're getting the dog-headed, well, we're not getting them yet, but we will be recruiting dog-headed fellows out of there, so that would be a bit sad if that was the case. We're doing a bit of blood hunting now, and we attempted to assassinate. These are some of Phlegra's reinforcements. Unfortunately, we rolled the gnome, and I mean, while it would be nice to get rid of a gnome, he is a fairly powerful magic caster. That said, you know, fairly weak chassis. So you know, if this kind of assassin was going to be able to assassinate a mage, a gnome is a pretty good target for him. Yeah, right. He's just like shrinking the Vineman. Like, that's fine. In fact, I think his slap also shrinks people. Our assassin has decided to just hang back. I maybe gave him the order to stay behind troops, which I now regret. I really think the best thing is to like hold one turn with the assassin so the Vineman can get out in front, and then order them to attack. And like, yeah, you can see the battle of the ages. Vinemen are not good. And I think he cast Iron Skin on himself. Yeah, so he actually has pretty high protection, right? Anytime you're up against an Earth Mage. So I think this is probably going to come down to like whose nerve breaks first. And like, yeah, really like probably whoever takes damage first. Now, luckily the Vinemen, right, they are mindless. So we don't have to worry about morale with them. So it's just a question of like if our assassin, I'm not actually sure when morale checks trigger during assassination battles. Definitely like damage, yeah, like something like that could have triggered a rout, and we took an affliction there, and he's crippled now, and that's not great. So hopefully no more, you know, casting like that. But we have done a bit of damage to this gnome, and gnomes, yeah, don't have a lot of health, 3 health, so we just need like one more lucky roll. Like, yeah, this could go either way. Yeah, something like a vine arrow is super dangerous. I don't know what our assassin is doing. Oh, the scripting on this. I don't know. I like using assassins, but I don't have great... Yeah, that didn't work out for us. I was going to say I don't have great luck, but I don't have great scripting for them. So that doesn't work out. But at least the investment on this failed assassin is much lower than normal for my usual failures. So I'm going to put that in the win column, right? Or at least the less painful loss column. And like, this is some serious commitment. Okay, so this didn't look like such a serious army, but that's because we couldn't see the majority of it, right, because of the glamour. So it looks like Pelagia decided to ride out. And they did mention that the war would probably be decided this turn, and I'm thinking that's, you know, this is the battle they were probably talking about. This is maybe province defense, I'm not sure. That kind of sounds like, oh no, it's like some horror stuff. Friendly currents. So all the globals that are up are from Yis, which is not good news for us. Although I'm not sure about relief. I guess maybe they were a bit worried about a fatigue play, or maybe just being fatigued out. But like, yeah, you can see that's 3, underwater royalty, the Queens of the Deep, Queens of Water, and they're pretty dangerous, right? We saw one of them do really well last turn, but there's a reason that these Morvark Knights, they're pretty notorious, right? They're like some of those sacreds that are, people fear them, and rightly so. They're even more dangerous on land, which is not good news for us. And the result of that battle was also not good news for us. So all 3 of the queens go down without doing too much damage. Like, yeah, Yis loses almost nothing. And I would say that there's a good chance that this war is basically over at this point. It's good to know that there's 102 Morvark Knights, potentially in our future. And it's like, well, should I have not committed to our land wars? Because that was the other option, right? We could gamble that Falegra was not going to attack us. We could just let Man, eat Abyssia, right? And not do anything on land, and then like throw our full strength at Yis, right? And while we still had an underwater ally. On the other hand, since we haven't committed, maybe Yis won't attack us. But yeah, I think Yis is probably in our future, and maybe we should have committed. It's just, while we could have picked up Yis's land holdings, we realistically weren't ever going to get the water, so it's just an unattractive war. And then especially like gambling that we're not going to get attacked by Falegra, who did have a lot of troops on our border, so, I don't know. It's always difficult to judge these things, right? And we've seen this thug group, and there's no way our province defense is going to be able to stop these guys. So yeah, that does not work out for us. And then, let's see, this is one of our attacks. Not actually as many attacks from Falegra as I was expecting. Right, this is one of our raiding. This is the raiding group that failed on top of Nazca, and now I'm just moving them back in the wake of Falegra's raiders. So they took this province from us, I believe, or maybe this might have been the province they launched from. This is quite a bit of province defense, so this is definitely very dangerous. We have no gems, so we're just kind of relying on our bodyguards and fire magic, which is still pretty good, right? And body ethereal, of course. And I don't think he said to advance and cast spells, though. That was a mistake. Previously he was using fire elementals. Actually, the archers will probably, run out of ammunition, thank heavens, and then they'll move forward into range. That's very kind of them, because otherwise, since we're the attackers, we would have retreated first, and we would have lost this. But this does work out, and that is good to know. Like, maybe should be doing more stuff like this instead of committing fire gems, right, to all of our raids. Not that fire elemental raiding is bad, it's just expensive. So, nice to get a victory here. We like that. And then we get attacked somewhere. Not sure where this is. Okay, interesting. So Falegra chose to, sort of sidestep, right? So I think this is the group with the gnome. Although I don't see a gnome, so maybe not. Maybe it's a different group. We left no province defense here. This is not one of the places we were defending, so this is going to work out for them. In sad times, right, this is what we were aiming at, right? There's just one commander here. This is the perfect target for our Vineman assassin, because he could totally take this guy out, and then no leadership for these guys. So this is a bit of a dangerous group. I think maybe a little too heavy of an investment for a raiding group. That said, like, these axe warriors are very cheap, so it's probably not as expensive as it looks. And so we do lose that province. That's 82 of them. That's a large raiding group. And then the war between Vanheim and Asphodel continues. We did commit to trying to get them some air gems. Trade of course. Like, we're not running a charity here. We're trying to take over the world. But if they could deal some damage to Asphodel on the way out, that would work out for us. So this is a pretty standard Elven Thug, although a little harder for Vanheim to get a hold of those items because they don't actually have any water magic or any nature magic nationally. And I think this is going to work out for him because this isn't a ton of province defense. Wow, and that elf is quite fast when you fast forward. I was just curious if that centaur commander was going to be able to handle this. Oh, he cast flight on himself, right. That works out for Vanheim, though he did take some poison damage, it looks like. But it looks like he survives. So that's nice. So some standard, oh no, he did not survive. Yeah, so, the resistances, especially for Elven Raiders, I think are very important. And definitely if you're going up against Asphodel, poison resistance is extra important. So maybe, giving it to him via an item. That said, Vanheim was not planning on fighting Asphodel, right? Asphodel chose this fight, Vanheim did not, so obviously they didn't prepare for it. Okay, yeah, here's some more attacks from Phlegra. So this is more what I was expecting. So let's take a look. Surely one of these is the major force. Nope, just raiding back more territory. And this is kind of another thug group. So we're definitely going to need anti-thug stuff. This is the fellow, well, actually there might be more than one fellow with a Hydra skin armor running around. And this guy's got a lot of death gems. That's a little concerning, although he's only death 2, so I suspect that this is to support his thugging, because invulnerability and soul vortex require death 3. But there is an outside chance that, there's a rigor mortis play, or maybe even a wind of death. Yeah, wind of death is something that Phlegra can do pretty easily, I think. Well, this guy can't, but they at least have one commander, who could potentially, they have the right paths at least. I'm not sure if they're high enough. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. We definitely, walking our army into a wind of death, that is something that would be very painful for us with our relatively low magic resistance. So we'll have to be careful of that. Agartha is attacking back. I do expect Agartha to fight pretty hard. I think this player is decent. And Agartha's position is not bad. And yeah, Ariu did not leave any province defense here, so it's going to work out. This is kind of an expensive raiding force, though. It's kind of interesting. He's using those great alms, it looks like, to pull fatigue, which is a bit expensive of a use, or maybe it's just a misplacement. Hard to say. So we'll try to keep an eye on that, although we don't have a ton of scouts in that area. And then looks like we got raided again. No, this is our army. Though this is the army, if I'm recalling, that doesn't have the gems, I think. So we're not going to be able to go through, we're not going to get the same level of support, but yeah, we just have way too much stuff here for a thug group to really, bother us too much, unless it's I don't know, you'd need some pretty serious gear. Because we do have, only 2 great swords of sharpness in this group. But still, we have them, and our knights are not awful at killing super combatants, right? We've seen them do decently well. So we get rid of a tyrant and we get rid of a gigante. That is very important. And we find some kit, which is nice. We could definitely use some kit. So the decision to hang out, I think, was the right one. And I'm kind of surprised that Phlegra, chose to do a lot of raiding, which I think is a good move. But I think this was pretty overconfident. Right? This is, it's like if you're going to raid, you probably should just raid. If you're going to attack, you should send in everything. So I think they felt that, our army didn't really have enough answers for super combatants. They'd be able to send this guy in and he'd just be able to tank the whole army. But yeah, that was not the case. Though in fairness, if they watch this channel, there might be reasons. Definitely have had problems with that in the past. And yeah, this is a more respectful attack because this has an army, although interestingly, no super combatant. Okay, no, he does. And this guy's twice born, right? So, this might be more of a spoiler attack, right? Where he's just like, well, if I can deal some damage, great. But otherwise, although that said, there are actually, quite a few really valuable mages in here. Troop-wise, though, right, this is all pretty replaceable for him, which is why I was thinking, especially since this guy's twice born, maybe he's just trying to, whittle my forces down before his main attack. But to risk all these throne mages with a ton of gems as well, at least on one of them. So that's interesting and dangerous. Possibly some air elementals in our future and some luck for his troops. Oh, hey, and here's our gnome friend, who, still has damage on him, right? You don't heal until, I think, the end of the turn. So, yeah, if you have to fight multiple battles, that's extra dangerous. But this is our army that does still have its gems. It even has a gem reload. So it's going to go through its full script, and, I think it's going to work out for us. We do have some bodyguards, thankfully, because we do have dudes in robes, and they have flyers. So, yeah, we got... all of our spells went off, and they've got... So at least some of their gems was also used for arrow fend, so both sides have arrow fend. That is important for our mages, but otherwise, not super relevant. And we don't mind so much about their arrowfen, because while we do have a group of crossbowmen, like I said, that's not really the main strength of the army here. And of course, always forgetting to put on team-colored squares. So, again, we don't really have a ton of numbers with this army, and I didn't set anybody to advance and cast spells, I don't think. So that could be a bit of a problem. But I think, we have the protection buff, whereas I don't believe Phlegra does. Let's take a look. Yeah, no natural protection, right? So they've got no protection buff. Whereas we do have a protection buff. So our protection is much higher across all of our units, and then with Fog Warriors as well. It's going to be a pretty tall order for this mostly mundane force, although there are enough mages back here. Like once the lightning starts coming out, it's not like we have like a critical hole with our knights, but I think these guys did enough other casting. Like yeah, they're probably mostly fatigued out. Phantasmal army, probably not going to matter too much. Not sure what all the colors flashing in the background. That's probably like our guys are probably cursed now. Yep. So there was a doom, and maybe an armor damaging spell, although this fellow at least managed to resist the armor being damaged. So I mean, Doom is one of those things, like when I first started playing, I really just hated the idea that it's like there's just nothing you can do. That is like but you just have to accept it, right? Like the late game, ideally it's like win early or it's gonna get ugly, and it is no longer early, right? So it's just, hey, our army got cursed, that's life. It didn't really matter, right? We lose 14 swordsmen, that's fine. Phlegra loses, I guess the majority, but they still have like quite a few units that retreated. So by no means like a crippling defeat, but a serious defeat. Mage losses are significant. Probably most significant are these Adepts of the Silver Order. That said, they were probably we're sitting on top of the Silver Throne. So it's not like these guys really, had a lot of other choices in terms of like where they could have gone. He potentially could have like teleported them out if he didn't want, to try to hold this province and, use them to fight us later. But that is good, because remember when I said Phlegra doesn't have any astral access? That's true that they have no native astral access, but these guys provide pretty significant astral access for them, so if we can, kneecap that would be very nice. Otherwise, like none of these mages are particularly expensive, and it's really the tyrants that we want to get rid of. That's probably the most important element, and really seems to be what they're leaning on. And while yes, it does say that this tyrant died, they were twice born, so we're going to see that tyrant again as a white mage. But still, this is a good result for us, and we have a retreat. Okay, I'm not sure. Probably a few bodyguards. So that is totally fine. So this, my fears were for naught, at least, over here on this side. And then, well, we're not totally out of the woods yet. This is the fortress. This is our army that didn't have any gems and doesn't have any gems. And there is absolutely a defense force in here, so this might go poorly. Also forgot / didn't know, or yeah, didn't realize that Phlegra gets these rock throwers as part of their, their wall defense. And the rock throwers with unlimited ammunition, kind of painful. Probably the most painful wall archers. They don't have very long range, so you might be able to cheese them. But we're not set up to cheese them, right? We're just going in. So we're absolutely going to eat some rocks. Although we did turn one into a frog, which is hilarious that actually landed, and then he failed to resist. So good work, mage, whoever did that. And then, yeah, there's just a mage cluster in the back here. It doesn't really look like they've been given much in the way of gems, if at all. And we can see that, like, even though these guys, have managed to get body ethereal, like, a lot of them are retreating and have damage on them. And this is kind of what I'm talking about having, it's like, you don't need that many archers for the archers to, like, pay some dividends. So it's like, should you rely on archers to be the main component of your army? Probably usually not. Maybe occasionally, early on. But are they useless, like, later in the game? I don't think so. I think, there's still always an advantage to be throwing some arrows into the enemy's back line, especially when, they have a bunch of dudes in robes. And the world of Dominions is rife with dudes in robes. And so this is man trying to storm Abyssea's capital, and they're using some mercenaries going in first. Very nice. I do approve of that, although they are, like, the heavy infantry, which is, like, never great. And it looks like Abyssea doesn't really have anything in their capital, which a little bit fills me with terror, because potentially that means they went somewhere else to mess with us, but hopefully they just didn't have that much, and there's only the one army that we already know about that I think we can handle. Although there is like, all right, isn't there a horror, the horror trap group? Where art thou? Why are you not here? Are you coming to mess with me? So yeah, I don't think man is going to have any problems with this, but this does raise a few questions. Also of note, curiously, Abyssia chose not to attack us this turn. We've probably cracked that fort. In fact, no, sadly we have not cracked that fort, and of course we have starvation. Oh, I really should have checked the supplies in that province. Every time. Let's see, are they at least? They're critically damaged, so we didn't quite get that one turn crack. Well, I guess it still would have been 2 turns, but this is really the first turn, right, that we committed enough troops that we're starting to get some starvation, right? We have a serious force on top of there that's actually trying to break it down, but still we don't quite get it, which means that, you know, Abyssia gets 1 more turn to prepare, and they may have teleported all their stuff. They do have some astral, not a ton of astral, so I doubt they could have teleported a lot into that fort, but they definitely could have teleported some things, so I think we can expect a breakout attempt from whatever's in the fort combined with their army next turn. Now this does mean that we can bring some more units, right, since we have 1 more turn, but I'm not really, right, we're already having starvation, so is more units really the answer? I don't know. And then we do lose a scout in Ulm's territory. At least I think this is a scout. Hope it's a scout. Yeah, okay, so I'm not actually sure where this is. This kind of looks like an Ulmish fort, or they might just be patrolling. In fact, I think this is probably in Phlegra's territory, so they chose to patrol inside of Phlegra's territory. And there's nothing wrong, like this is like kind of a modest army, but there's almost no mage commitment here. He does have some Black Lord thugs, and like, yeah, I think this is a solid kit, although frankly, I don't know. Magic resistance is one of Ulm's problems, so I understand, right? I think normally having an amulet of anti-magic on your thugs is a good idea, but for a low-cost thug like a Black Lord, where I feel like you want to go wide, right, rather than deep in terms of like investing heavily in just a few Black Lords, invest lightly in a lot of them. Just, I mean, right, magic resistance 13 is still abysmal, so it's like, don't even bother. So, you know, that part of the kit, while I understand, I kind of disagree with. The braces of protection, absolutely. And let's see, yeah, so like this I think is better. Because this guy's going to be decently scary, and like at the end of the day, like, yeah, is 9 worse? Of course, right? Like that's painful. But 13 is not going to protect you either, so just don't bother. So no mage support, but some thug support. In fact, actually fairly heavy thug support. And considering how Phlegra's been playing, right, where they've been kind of leaning on those tyrants, their super combatants, perhaps the lack of mage commitment here, you know, is not a problem, right? Because they do have some answers to what they're likely to be facing up against. Although I do think, you know, that's enough commitment, especially with 4 Black Lord thugs. It's like, just bring along like 2 mages to spam out like some Legions of Steel and Strength of Giants. I don't know. I think that's worth the research. But anyway, we also, this is the throne, Phlegra's throne, so it was breached, remains breached. We will probably storm this turn, and yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. First things first, I guess let's cover the Phlegra situation. So we're going to storm here with our main force. I don't think there's really anything here that can stop us. I actually did not put on double gems. Probably could have, actually. I do have another reload in here, but chose not to. Which definitely could come back to bite us, but we'll... this is like mostly a raider. There is a tyrant here, so that's a little bit dangerous. But I also don't think there's a ton that retreated into here. Like a decent amount of numbers, but nothing really that's going to threaten us. So I think we'll really only need gems for one fight, if at all. And then our other army is moving out. So we've seen this before, and actually we can't really even see. I'm just bringing up a couple of the Soulslay fellows. Yeah, the most kitted out Soulslay fellows are going to join with this army just to provide a little bit of extra, you know, super combatant counters. And then the rest of it is going to go, you know, to the south here. Unfortunately, like the timing of this, so it's early winter, the timing of this invasion has not been great. There's actually like quite a few mountain passes here, and while Phlegra, I think, took like some heat, right? Because like we can see there's no snow really in their provinces that we can see, whereas like, you know, there's plenty of snow elsewhere. I don't think they took heat 3, right? Because like on our side of the mountains, it's like heat 2 kind of thing. On their side of the mountains, like neutral. So these are actually closed right now. And so, yeah, all of our attacks are going to be kind of funneled through this one province, which is fine, right? Not the end of the world, but it would have been faster to jump on Nazca with our main army, right? If we could have just gone 1-2. Now we have to loop around this mountain pass. I don't think it'll matter since we're on decent terms with Ariu, and if they were to jump in on a capital, yeah, we've discussed that. And then, of course, they're busy with Agartha. So I think we'll have time, but it's not ideal. Something to consider next time, perhaps. Also, satisfyingly, I was looking, we're recruiting a scout here. Not that that's really relevant, but repeat recruitment was actually checked. One of the quirks of Dominions is when you take over a province or like a fort and the previous player, had checked repeat recruitment, it remains checked. So I think that it wasn't just that there was a random scout that was forgotten. There were indeed scouts pouring out of both of these provinces. Well, at least this province, probably both of these provinces. Not super relevant, but, it is satisfying that it looks like, my intuition was correct and that Phlegra was at least thinking about attacking us, certainly scouting us very heavily. And then the defense here is pretty much just fire elementals, along with some dudes. So that should be fine. We don't really have PD because Lion Tribe, but this is just, something like 80 Helit warriors, which is scary, but, against 4 fire elementals, probably overkill actually. But still working on, trying to get those ratios correct. We are splitting this army and gatewaying out a good chunk of it. So this is going to gateway out, and it's going to gateway to this province, this palisade that we just took. And it'll probably just follow in the tracks of our other army, and we'll hopefully add a few mages to it, though we are pretty low on mages up here in Mictlan. But we may actually loop around the coast, right? Because we do have a decent amount of mages over here, so this might become the mage core for this other army. And this army isn't really doing anything, and a lot of it's just crossbowmen, so, we're pulling out a chunk of it. We do want to leave some of it behind, but I do think it's going to take Yis, at least a few turns. Pelagius still has like a lot of provinces, and while this is a really scary stack, it's not going to take provinces very quickly. So I'll be interested to see, whether Yis chooses to split up to speed things up, or whether they, stay defensive and just stay in their one big stack. I did get in touch with Pelagia, and they're the outlook for the war is not good, as we suspected, and I probably should reach out to Yis at this point and see if I can, get a non-aggression pact. If I can't, then that's probably a signal that they're looking to attack, and maybe try to convince them to join a coalition against Asphodel. I think this is probably the point in the game where it's time to talk to the rest of the living nations. Not so much Ariu, simply because they don't share a border with Asphodel. So Ariu is going to be a problem, simply because they are absolutely massive, assuming they manage to pull off this Agartha situation. I do think Agartha will keep them busy for a bit, because Agartha does still have like some forts free and everything, but this is not looking good. And while we have quite a few capitals, right? So like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 capitals now. We don't really quite have like 4 nations, right? Especially Arcocephaly and Bandar were both quite small. So in terms of like other territory that we picked up, not so much. Whereas like Ariu is kind of legitimately, 3 or 4 nations large, right? They ate a good chunk of Ind. They also ate Uruk, and then they ate, most of Ashdod. And now if they manage to get all of Agartha, like they're going to be absolutely massive. So while, Ariu has been a stable, ally, if you will, in this game, they are starting to get to the point where it's pretty concerning. And what's worse is I think they're going to run out of targets, right? So the other living nations that I would talk to other than Yis are Man and Ulm, right? Because they're the other ones. And I mean, Shiniyama as well, although they are smaller and weaker. So while they might be interested in attacking Asphodel, I really think like I'm going to need Man and Ulm. Like those are going to be the main guys. And then between, all of us, I think we will be able to handle Asphodel, as good as that player is. Famous last words. But of course, right, if either or possibly both of them are getting attacked by Ariu from the other direction, then, they're not really going to be able to commit against Asphodel. But I do think we're starting to get to the part of the game where if we leave Asphodel alone for too much longer, they're going to start to do the really nasty pop kill things that are going to cause serious problems for the remaining living nations. So we'll see. That's definitely long term, but so we are leaving some forces there because we may have to deal with Yis. We will definitely eventually have to deal with Asphodel. The other thing is Selvin cracked this fort, so we are at least bringing in a wineskin, which I just didn't equip. So hopefully that'll fix our starvation, and we should get the crack next turn, if I recall. The other thing, of course, is this is the same player as Asphodel. Rather than throwing this army into the army that I felt could beat it pretty handily, I'm guessing this move indicates that they agree. It's possible they're planning on doubling back onto their capital, and maybe this is still where the horror trap is. But the other possibility, right, from all these arrows is that they're heading towards our relatively undefended fort, and there's enough siege strength here. They might be able to crack this in one turn. I don't remember if this is a castle. Okay, nice. This is a castle. We must have taken this. Yeah, this is Tianchi Fort. I tend not to upgrade into castles, so they probably won't be able to one-turn crack. But still, we don't want to lose this fort, so we're just moving in a bunch of random stuff, mostly mages, a little bit of chaff. Something of note, right, these halberdiers, they're only map move 12, and this is a move that they can't make, right? Same situation here. We have to leave the halberdiers behind. But the flagellants, right, since they're not wearing any armor, move just a little bit faster. You might think map move 12, map move 14, that's pretty close, and it is. But sometimes that makes the difference. So the flagellants can make it, the halberdiers cannot. So we're definitely going to be light in terms of infantry and chaff, but we should have more than enough mages to resist any kind of attack. And of course, Abysia might be going back to combine with whatever's inside their capital. Actually, excuse me, their capital was just taken, so there's nothing to combine with, right? So that's the mystery. So potentially, right, the horror trap is in here. That would be the worst case scenario for me, right? So rather than wasting their army against our army, they just use horrors on it to mess our army up, which would not be great. And they use their army to siege down some of our relatively undefended infrastructure. So this is costing us a good amount of research, but it's not the end of the world. Recruitment wise, we're kind of down across the board. We're still doing a little bit of infantry recruitment here. No, actually, yeah, switched over to paladins. Maybe shouldn't have made paladins. We actually do we're kind of using them as our leaders here, which I do want to move away from, but really what we need is great swords of sharpness, which we are forging a few, although we're pretty low on earth gems, so I don't think we actually have quite enough for these guys. We'll see. But yeah, now remember, these paladins we want to send up against these guys because we don't really have a plan for them yet. We are still recruiting knights here, but we're not going to have a ton of knights right by the time these guys, so we'll see, right? We can hand out swords next turn and move here, and then if they move on top of our fort, we can break out with what's inside and move the paladins on top with great swords of sharpness, and that should be more than enough for this group. This other raiding group, we'll see. It's a little stronger because it actually has a white mage leading it. We're just going to use our witch hunter group here, our lone witch hunter, to try to retake this, but of course if he bumps, we'll lose him, but that's fine. So again, not too worried about this group coming in really deep. Yeah, it's annoying, right? We lose some gems, and the sooner that we can end it, right, the better, but it's we have other more pressing things. And then of course the horror harmonica golem, he can't go underwater, but we are planning on, he's kind of, all these mages and stuff are really sort of the backup plan, right? The main plan is to use our horror harmonica golem, right? He should be able to get rid of these mundane units we'll see. I'm not totally sold on his kit. His protection isn't really high enough, and he's actually missing the relevant damage reduction type. A lot of Abyssian units actually use blunt, so he won't die with the Ring of Returning, but he might get sent home before he can really do anything. It depends on how quickly the horrors come in, and we really need to combine him with some chaff cover, and I'm not sure completely yet how to do that, especially in the magic phase, although sadly we won't be able to magic phase. I was hoping to just jump directly on top of this, right, and destroy it, and we wouldn't have to think about it, but teleport does have a maximum range, and he can actually only teleport to this fort here. So he's going to teleport over to this fort, and then he's going to walk on top of our other fort, assuming of course Abysia does come and attack us. And then speaking of artifacts and all that stuff, let's see, yeah, our pretender is forging another artifact. It's the Tome of Gaia, which is +1 earth and +1 nature, for 10 nature gems and 10 earth gems. And yeah, probably not one of the most impactful artifacts. Again, I didn't really have an artifact plan here other than the alchemy stone. But I find that, boosters are almost never a bad thing to have, so it's a fairly safe forging. And last turn in that vein, we forged another booster, this fellow here. Similarly, like, this is really good, boosting for this amount of cost. So it's not that, this booster is bad, it's just I don't actually have a specific plan for this yet, but, +1 death, +1 blood, we'll find a use for it, definitely. At least the Tome of Gaia, I am planning, do have a specific use there. I've always wanted the Wolf Cannon, or the Werewolf Cannon, also known as the Soul Stone of Wolves, and this just allows you, it also, if you take it into battle, which I don't really recommend, but you never know, 65 gems is a lot to be risking, but you can cast Call of the Wild for free, right? This is the one that gets you a pack of wolves and a werewolf. Werewolves are not great, and this is not a great spell. It's not very good at taking provinces, and we'll probably often just cast this on our own provinces. When we see a very lightly defended province that's in range, like, sure, we'll use this to take it. And then werewolves are not great thugs, but we don't really have easy thug chassis, and so this will at least get us a thug a turn, and we can use the wolves as patrollers without actually having to spend any nature gems anymore. So it's a pretty expensive item, right? We're going to use up most of our nature gems forging this at first, but it will pay for itself fairly quickly, just in terms of raw cost. Now, whether or not this spell is actually useful, like, is it actually worth all those gems? I don't know. Mostly, I just want the Wolf Cannon. So, that's what our Pretender is doing right now. Next turn, I don't think we'll quite have the gems for it. So we'll probably actually put up Eternal Pyre, which I know I was talking about putting up this turn. But then I realized that Phlegra, I think, still does have a few of their adepts of the Silver Order, who have enough Astral that they could dispel. Now, of course, he could have other adepts, scattered in, like, what throne is this? Okay, this is where the gnomes are coming from. So I think this is his only source of Astral, short of some other indies that we don't know about, which is possible. But this is a known source of Astral, and I know that at least a few adepts retreated, so we're storming this turn anyway. Like, let's get in there, kill off the known Astral, then put up this spell that might get dispelled. So that's kind of the thinking there. So yeah, we'll probably use our Pretender, to put Eternal Pyre up next turn for a similar amount that we did last time. And then, again, if it goes down right away, probably Asphodel. But we'll see. Asphodel definitely mentioned in the chat, in the general chat, just kind of talking that, Area's looking a little big and a little scary, which they absolutely are. So, maybe Asphodel's not quite as worried about us, as I thought. Still not really sure about Man, right? Haven't really heard back yet. So, we'll see about that one. We do at least have an army in the area. Like, this is kind of, we have a lot of forts down here, so we should be able to respond to any attack, but it will, of course, slow us down trying to do other things. And then let's see, a quick look at research. Yeah, so we're about to get Enchantment 7 for that Serpent's Blessing, and then Evocation 7. Yeah, we've talked about them. Same research goals. We'll probably tag Alteration 9 onto this afterwards, but we'll see. And then, of course, we do have some graphs. So here's gem income in all of its madness with everybody on it. I'll go ahead and eliminate some of the players that have been eliminated. All right, so here it is filtered down. I also took off a few players that are still alive, but, kind of on their last legs. So here we are. This is right when we lost Eternal Pyre, that, huge dip, right? Here's our huge jump when we cast it. Ulm has Earthblood Deepwell, so that's what this huge jump is, right? So this is Ulm. But we can see, I'm pretty sure this is, Asphodel is leading in terms of size, while at least in terms of gem income, which is fairly closely correlated to size, although they also, they have Mother Oak, right? So this is inflated a little bit. So Ariu probably is larger than Asphodel, and that more or less works out in terms of roughly how they look on the map as well. But yeah, right, so, here's Ariu, here's Asphodel. They are both looking quite dangerous. We're, in a respectable third, not too far off, and if we put Eternal Pyre back up, I think we will jump into first. Also of note, we can see they've been doing a good amount of climbing lately. This is Man right here, and so yeah, I think, these are more or less the game leaders, right? These are, you can see that after these players, there's a decent drop. Yeah, so we can see like Agartha definitely having a rough time of it recently. Like, there's a significant drop, although they, are making a small comeback. And then, of course, Vanheim is one of the people who probably on the way out, but still actually have some gem income, and they're almost exactly on par with Pelagia, which doesn't bode well for our underwater friends. Although Atlantis is actually lower than either of them, so I'm not sure. It looks like Atlantis has been relatively stable for most of the game, so maybe just not ever really a lot of expansion or sort of nibbling in their wars, or perhaps really unlucky, right, at the gem spread. This is not provinces, this is gem income, so it's roughly correlated, but not perfectly correlated. Shiniyama is doing decent. They're about on par with Phlegra. So yeah, this more or less confirms what we kind of already knew from scouting, but it is nice to get some confirmation of that. And then I hope you guys are ready for this. For research, we are actually in first, which might be a first for me. Of course, it's hard to know because normally you don't have the graphs. It's important to note that we are first in rate of research at the moment. We probably do not have the most research, which would be area under the curve, because you can see that we've been trailing behind. One of these is definitely Ulm. Yeah, Ulm is probably in the research lead, although we're not too far off from them, and I would say Ariu is pretty darn close as well. Interestingly, it looks like, Atlantis's research is quite good, although they must have mobilized. This must be the war against Pelagia, I'm guessing. And it looks like we might have gotten to Phlegra just at the right time, or possibly a little too late, because their research is really starting to take off. So the sooner we finish the war, the better, which is always true, but especially true considering this research curve. And then after that, it is, fairly neck and neck. Asphodel's research is significantly lower as compared to their gem income, and I think that's just because it's difficult for them to mass mages because they have gold problems. But I'm just guessing there. I'm not an Asphodel expert. Possibly also, the player has just been running a lot of wars, which I'm sure they have been, and may also feel that, they only need to hit certain research targets, so I haven't been focusing on it too much. I definitely think you can overcommit to research, although it is very, very important. I think we somehow managed to miss Yis in terms of gem income, who not looking very impressive, actually pretty close to Pelagia and Vanheim. So Yis is actually not that large, which is good news for us. So while they would be really, really annoying for us to fight, and we would probably have to fight them for the rest of the game if they chose to, I do think that we could probably push them back, right, and grind them down and get to a situation where, we controlled the land and we would just have to deal with periodic incursions from underwater. And research-wise, I think it's kind of a similar story. In fact, you can even see, this is research. This is definitely from the mobilization, in their war against Pelagia, but they actually have, at least currently, the lowest research rate of, the selected people. So anyway, a little bit of information here that just fell into our lap from that site, and I think that more or less covers turn 57.